Let's share experiences. Let's see how we see communities ourselves, networks, how we manage them, and, well, hopefully hope this audience have some insights and help them grow their own community. So guys, can we see, raise your hands who is doing an ICO here. Yes, one, two, three.
All right.
So hopefully this is going to be helpful for you because community is ultimately very important for a successful ICO. So I'll give the floor to fellow panelists. Please introduce yourself. And the first question is going to be right away, what's community for you?
Sure. My name is Frank Mong. I'm with Helium. One of the biggest important things we believe in is a common cause. Helium as a company is on a mission to build a new network, a network for machines, a network to connect little robots and have applications that don't exist today. And we believe that the problem is telcos, the large guys like T-Mobile, AT&T, wherever you're from in the world, right? Telcos are centralized. We think that's wrong. We think it has to be completely decentralized. You should be the network. You should be the telco. You should be providing coverage. And so we've built hardware technology that we've open sourced, so anyone can, provide a network for machines. In return, you mine tokens for that. That's a very simplistic way of talking about it. Check it out. But to do this, we need to build a two-sided marketplace. Like Airbnb, Uber, and Lyft, we need people that are willing to host a network and people that are willing to use the network, all right? And so there's hosters and users. So we've built two different sides and two different communities. One that's very technical, people that are building technology to use this network, and the other side is very consumer-esque, like you and I, all of us here. You can buy the gateway and you can become a hoster of the gateway that's not dependent on the telco. And so that's two separate communities, but the same common cause for us. And so I think that's why communities are so important for what we're trying to do at Helium.
What's the community for you by definition?
By definition, it's that purpose, right? Let's go beat the centralized entity, beat the telco together, whether you can do it by hosting a network or you can do it by using the network in a different way.
Thank you.
Nice. Just wanted to check if the mic works nice. Name is John Kaplan with MegaBlock. We primarily invest in pre-sales, ICOs. I've been doing it for a couple of years. So we've seen some projects go from sub 100 members to over 70,000 in their Telegram groups, which has given us firsthand experience of what it takes to get there. And so I'll be speaking on behalf of a little bit about that. But we also have another company called Blockchain Generation, which is out of Istanbul, Turkey. And with that, we're connected, deeply connected into the Turkish crypto community, which is a very large community. And we are able to guide them into projects that we're very excited about. Yeah.
Okay. Hi, my name is Chuck. I'm a venture partner at W. Hopper, which is one of the leading U.S.-China venture capital firms. But prior to that, actually, I've actually been, I've started a number of companies myself, as well as actually, really been investing in a number of actually early stage companies affiliated with one of the most active, blockchain investors out of China as well. Additionally, I'm also the founding advisor of the leading blockchain incubator, in China, University Link. They have about 30-some, incubators throughout China. But in terms of the question about, community itself, I really, from my perspective, actually, I wanted to use an example because one of my portfolio companies, which I'm an early investor in, it's called Open, O-B-E-N. They're actually a featured company out of Idea Lab, in one of the leading incubators in the LA area. It's interesting because I'm an early investor in them, but at the same time, I kind of mentioned community in a way. It's also, of course, I think Frank, you've already mentioned, how important it is from a customer perspective. But I also want to mention about community as, really from an investor perspective, really kind of maintaining that sort of momentum and quote unquote halo, if you will, and that's also very important as well from my perspective, because that company, Open itself, raised pretty good size equity round, but they're actually pre-sale, actually far exceeding their equity round. And the reason why they're able to do that right, was actually they themselves have actually built up a very good community, as in a really a great support base. Because basically what they did is, they won all they've actually, of course, very good product, very strong company to begin with. They have very strong, like team members, which are very strong in open, by the way. It's a virtual you in the virtual reality, essentially. So you're building your own yourself on the virtual world, essentially. That's what they do. But so imagine yourself that you can, your virtual world, that you can actually, you look better, you can sing better, you can speak many languages, right? That's essentially what Open's product is, and that's why it's pretty cool, right? They're actually a really good product, a very cool product to begin with. But at the same time, they've actually got all these halos because, well, I'm an early investor, but in addition to that, I mean, SoftBank as well as Tencent, right? I mean, you guys know SoftBank, you guys, know Tencent, right? That's the largest internet player, the Facebook of China, for instance, right? So they've also have partnership with HTC, right, which is the leading company in that space. So as a result of that, they actually kind of build up this whole entire ecosystem. And as a result of that, whenever they go to different places, I mean, a lot of the investors will follow them, and they actually have these, I mean, like just like this. I mean, like events such as like a small dinners or small events where they actually communicate, with the various investors. All of you guys could be investors, right? But let me ask you a question. How many of you guys are investors here? Very good. I see my good friend Jackie. By the way, Jackie, raise your hand. Jackie, right there, he's an investor from Asia, a leading investor from Asia as well. But how many of you guys are engineers? Very good. Okay, so that's great. How many of you guys are sales and operations? Oh, wow, very good. So, no, we have a pretty good size of a community, I guess, in a way. But anyways, I think from that perspective, as I mentioned, let me just stop here, and then we'll continue this conversation. But thank you.
Right. So actually, yeah, you mentioned some really good points. For me, the community starts like with a very traditional sense that it unites people around the same goals, objectives, ideas. So these people are willing to communicate with each other, help each other, and help community growth. So in a business sense, community starts with your team. And pretty much often when I have a project reaching out to me, my first question is, how are you excited about your project? Because your first community is your own team, and it starts from yourself. How do you like your project? How do you like your product, first of all? And then you ask your co-founder, do you like it? And then whoever you hire in your team, they gotta be that core community emanating the sense of, wow, we love it. Everywhere we go, we talk about it. And then if you're in an ICO space, same applies to advisors. They are the first core member of your community who's gonna bring on organically 10 more people. And then those 10 more people are gonna turn into 20, 40, 50. So to me, it's a very traditional approach, and that works for organic community growth. It's proven by time, proven by the strategy that Airbnb had. So yeah. And so the second question I have is, what trends do, because we are all here talking about ICO, and the whole conference is about, how to invest, how to run the ICO. So what do you see the current trend in community management, Telegram group, Amazics, or whatever you say, like the most famous right now, the pioneers in community management space. What do you think, or put it other way, how not to manage community?
Well, I think for us, because we're a very technical company with a very technical hardware product as well as software, we need to have technical folks. So the people that raise their hands, if you're a developer, whether you're a CS or you're a hardware person, you're into radios, I mean, that's the kind of member we want, because you've got brain power, you have experience, you have curiosity. And so for us, like that organic approach, the community with the common goal of, hey, let's go take down the big AT&T conglomerate, that's a great mission to be on, but we need like experts, right? We need people that know what they're talking about in our channel. So when we first started Slack and Telegram, those were the people on our channel asking questions. Hey, how does your 900 megahertz spectrum work here in the US? what is it in Japan? What is it in Russia? How do we do this? What are the chips that we're using? What are the specs? It was very detail-oriented, very low-level stuff. But that's what excited people. That's what brought others like-minded to our channels. And that's how it started. And it started on day one with just a few people, and it organically grew. And we couldn't control it. And as soon as the word gets out, you tell your friend, and they tell their friends, and they come and see the flow of conversation is relevant to them, they'll join and they'll contribute. And I think you're right. It just starts from grassroots, and it starts from talking about relevant things for them, right? That matter.
There's a couple of things I've seen like over time that projects have done which they should not have done. It wasn't the best thing for them to do. One of which is, there's been projects that raised their cap midway through the raise, which turned off a lot of the investors and the hype post exchange listing, which obviously dumped the price, and then dumped the excitement as well with that. So like big changes like that, I would avoid. Like the other thing is promising a deadline or promising that they would achieve something by a certain time on their roadmap, publicly announcing it in their announcement channel, and then not doing it. That's going to turn off a lot of developers, it's going to turn off the investors, and it's going to turn off everybody else that was, like, it's just not good. Some other bad things like a community or bad community management is like, saying that they would, how do I put this? Let's see. I'll leave it at those.
Just say it.
No, I'll leave it at those 2 points. Go ahead.
Well, I mean, I think Frank and John both mentioned, I think Frank specifically mentioned about the idea that you really have to have a core product, right? I mean, you have to have a good product, assuming that's not an issue here, right? I mean, which I think Frank mentioned to the point that it's going to disrupt the current telecom industries and all the players in that space. So assuming that, you have a core product, right, you really, I mean, and then at the same time, I mean, I think that I think also at the same time, really the other things don't become an issue. It's really about, I think, finding the right people to your spokesperson, in my opinion, right? And how do you do that, right? I mean, at the end of the day, I think it's I mean, and we mentioned this. I mean, I mentioned that in day one, especially in a decentralized world, everything is. I mean, everywhere is global, actually, in day one. And that's why it's not just here in the US, it's not in Europe, it's just also in Asia. And so I think it's understanding the different sort of, one thing is kind of also be sensitive, because I'm understanding what are some of the tools that you can use, right? I mean, I can talk a little bit more, I mean, I grew up in San Francisco, but I also spent years like in China as well. So like, for instance, in China, we mentioned Tencent, right? Tencent is, they actually, it's, as you know, I actually hosted Facebook in China for the first time last year. But you should know, Facebook is blocked in China. So if you were to try to, kind of create a community, not just here in the US, let's say in China, for instance, you really have to understand what are some of the tools that you can use. So in China's instance, right, you have to really use the dominant tool there, which is Tencent. I mean, the WeChat, for instance, right? And also at the same time, they also have the Twitter. Twitter is also blocked in China. So what's the equivalent of that? The equivalent of that is actually called Weibo, for instance, right? And so there's actually, there's like tons and tons of followers. So followers like, as you know, 20. There's guys like 50. There's guys 100 million followers, for instance, right? So I mean, I think it really my suggestions, my recommendations, and is if you want your product to be viral and kind of hit to the right places, obviously you want to build on the key opinion leaders and who are particularly in that in your space, and using the right tools and having the sort of right strategies behind that, I think obviously will be helpful on that front.
Right, thank you, Jens. Just to give a little bit of a background, I wish actually this panel was named how not to manage community instead of, in the ICO space. So what we see as a rating agency, and that's very disturbing, Telegram groups with booming amount of users in there, members, 40,000, 50,000 people, and then say an ICO reaches out to us and says, hey, can you publish an article? We are the largest community ever on Telegram for the ICO. We have 100,000 members. And then you ask, how did you do that? So basically, they just did an airdrop to all the people who potentially may use the product, but most likely they just want to make a quick buck. So that's very disturbing. And then you see Reddit, you see Bitcoin Talk with lots of FOMO. So here is the question to you, gents. What should the strategy be for the ICO in this fast-paced environment? Say, it's actually it's quite disturbing too. So you start contemplating the ICO, say, in January, and you start running it in July. So how can you build a community in 6 months, and what the strategy should be in this situation?
Yeah, I don't know. I think I'm of the mindset that the more you rush it, the more you try to manipulate the market, everyone's sort of shitcoin radar should go off, you know. And I don't know, man. You're in the rating business. I'm not. But when I look at all the different types of coins out there and what they're talking about in their channels, because I didn't know anything about Telegram. I knew nothing, right? I had to go figure that out. So I joined every single channel I could off of your list, actually. I'm just using your list and going, oh, what channel do they have? And I'm looking at the conversations, and there's a bunch of stupid emojis. I get nothing of use out of this, right? And that to me is a bad...
When Binance, when Lambo, when Moon.
Lambo, when Moon, right? I don't understand what that means. Like, where's the actual content? Where's the information about the idea? How is the idea actually coming to fruition? And I feel like those are the important things that co-founders, companies that are trying to raise money, you need to provide that, like provide transparency. If you don't know, just say you don't know. Don't promise a date and not deliver on the date, as you said. And if you show progress, like one of the things I found to be useful that maybe we should do more is I've got pictures of our hardware. I show video of us troubleshooting the firmware, the OS booting up. I want to show you as much as I can so that you can see, not being in the office with us, that this is real. We're real people. We have a real project. We have real hardware. It's going to be the first green mining machine for consumers to bridge them into blockchain. But you don't know that. You guys don't know who we are. You don't know who I am. So I have to show you as much as possible. So I see the channels and I see different forms as a way to actually give you more information. And the more I show you, I feel like the more you can hopefully believe me that we're not a shitcoiner. We're not here to try to make a quick buck. We're not trying to build FOMO or whatever. Luckily, we can do that. We're backed by GV, Google Ventures, and Coastal Ventures, so we're not here to raise money or token sales or whatever. Maybe I'm on the wrong panel. I don't know.
No, those are really good points. I mean, one way like the projects have been combating that problem with their community members just tossing a bunch of emojis and, you know, when's the exchange listing and all that is they create an announcement channel. So they separate the two. And so, like, that's been happening often now. And it's very useful, right? Because you can just look at their official announcements and you won't actually have to look too much in their discussion group. But they also have the discussion group because that's also important. You have to build a community. Without community, none of this can exist. I mean, you know, Bitcoin has the largest community in the world, and then it's branched off into all these amazing new projects. And, you know, we're constantly seeing new companies that are coming into the market with exciting ideas. So how do they get your idea to all the developers out there, all the salespeople, people that want to jump on board the ship and help a common goal? Well, you know, they do that through marketing. And marketing can branch off into so many aspects with influencer marketing and, you know, going through other channels. But at the end of the day, like, I think it's all about, you know, managing the community very seriously, and that's an entire job by itself. So
I have a question for you. How do you keep out the scammers, and how do you keep the pump and dumpers out of your channels?
That's tough because like, you know, that exists in every market, even penny stocks. I mean, yeah. That exists in every market. Like, how do you keep them out? I mean, you just you make it less appealing for them to come in the first place. But I think a lot of those community members are going into these channels because of the hype that the channel has created, which is not a bad thing, right? Like, at the end of the day, if you have a project and you want to create hype, why? Because then you get developers that are excited, salespeople that are excited, other people that want to join your company and help out, partnership opportunities from actual companies who say, wow, you guys are doing this is exciting, let's get together on this. So, like, hype is marketing. Marketing has to be done, and marketing will always attract the good and the bad players. And, like, we're in a space where we have to have a healthy balance, you know, so it's hard to keep that out.
And I have to say, like, I'll give you guys sort of our antidote, what we've done. We don't have a big Telegram channel. We have like 5,000 people on it. But what we found, though, is after we hit 1,000 and above, we started seeing some random stuff. Not scams, but just people want to post other ICOs and other sites. And we were very polite. Hey, could you guys not use this as your advertising channel? This is for technical conversation. And I think by asking politely, they actually responded politely, saying, hey, sorry about that. We didn't mean to do that. But we kept the conversation very technical. Here's our board design, give us your opinion. Here's some code we're thinking about for how we handle consensus. What do you think? And asking very technical engagement questions really helped us keep the channel true to its form. For us, we want it to be technical.
Oh yeah, like I mean, if you're talking about keeping spam out,
Yeah.
like then that's, you know, an admin in the channel that, you know, is doing this full time can keep the spam out and kick out the, you know.
Yeah.
But yeah.
Well, actually, on that front, I think Frank pointed out a really important point, which is really, he mentioned the point about, you know, really be upfront, right? Don't hide anything from your community. Don't try to do anything. Not just the community itself, really. I mean, honestly, you don't hide anything from your investors, right? You know, because otherwise it's just gonna be more and more trouble for you, right, as it goes, you know, given time. The other thing that's really interesting, I think, is it's you know, the question about how do you build something within 6 months, right? Really, which is the question. And actually, one of the companies I know, what they did is they have a core product. I mean, going back to the really sort of what I said before, right? I mean, soon your product is not an issue. They actually have a really good product. And then what happened was there's another company which actually already built a community with like a few 100,000 people, but they actually don't have a product, and they're complementary to each other. So as a result of that, they were able to leverage that whole infrastructure they were able to build. And this is a real case, seriously. I mean, so in 7 months' time, from zero, they actually built to almost 150,000 members in that community. Now, of course, I don't want to necessarily say this in public, but if you guys want more, have more questions on that exact how they did it, I'd be happy to share that with you. But it's really sort of a complementary strategy that they were able to leverage that, and that actually it worked well for them.
All right, thank you. So actually the whole conversation is turning around building or managing online community, whereas it's only a part of real community development and management. My initial question was about community strategy. So how do you start? How do you start with deciding what kind of strategy is good for you? Because obviously there are B2B, B2C businesses and so on. And in our experience in Airbnb, everything started with like thoroughly analyzing who your target audience is. Say there are hosts. Let's go speak with them. Let's see what they like about the product, where is the room for improvement, first of all, and then make them happy. And in this fast-paced ICO environment, building the community, it's not only about online. Say you do B2C business, right? We have WeWork literally all over the world right now. Find your target audience, understand who they are potentially, talk to them and ask to help. Organize a meetup. Try to get the like-minded people. You can do it in New York, you can do it in London, you can do it in Amsterdam, in Shanghai, in Hong Kong, in Singapore. And it won't take you perhaps a month. Those people are gonna create, they're gonna summon, say, 20 people, and those 20 people are gonna turn into 40, and then bring them online. And those people's gonna, like many people like to say in San Francisco, spread the love about your product. And then you start managing online group, be it Reddit, be it Bitcoin Talk. Those guys, in case there is an attack from the competitor or whatever, you do something wrong, they's gonna be the ones protecting you and helping you grow. So I mentioned this question before. What are the trends you see, that negatively affect community building, community management, and what not excites you, but you get frustrated and you think this shouldn't be ever done?
Like, I mean, my past point, which was like when projects promise that they're going to do something by a certain date, they don't do it, or like when they change terms. I mean, when these projects are doing these kinds of things, they're spoken negatively about amongst the investor community, and therefore, like, obviously the investor community is no longer as excited, and they don't want to help them with new talent or building the community furthermore. So, like, to avoid those two biggest things. But, to your points, like, those are very good points that I think a project has to define first what its goal is, and then find its target audience in that goal, and find out what the target audience wants and how they can meet that desire. I think breaking it down like that is very, very good.
I like that. The goal is very important. I think I would translate goal as make sure your project, first of all, has a real point. Like, why are you doing it? It's got to solve a problem. And so I think I get frustrated by seeing projects that actually don't solve any problems. And they're not really solving a problem in a unique way by adding blockchain. They're just doing it to create a token and building FOMO on it. That's really frustrating. I think the other thing around communities that I find frustrating, maybe I'm new to it, is we introduce a new concept around taking down telcos. We build hardware and software with our own native blockchain, and we get attacked by guys like IOTA. You probably heard of those guys. They'll start throwing shade and troll us, and we'll ask them, hey, if you think we copied you, tell us how we copied you. Read the white paper, look at our specs, look at the design. Everything's open source, and then nothing. Come From Beyond is one of their CTOs. He's a complete idiot. The guy's on Twitter and Telegram trolling us saying we copied him. I'm like, hey, dude, just tell us, how do we copy you? Validate it, will you please? And then silence, right? I just don't. I think it's easy to, like, say to them, hey, your project sucks and you're ugly, you're too fat, when it's on this online forum or in this virtual world. But when they're face to face, they shut up because they have nothing to substantiate that. That's sort of the negative side of communities that I dislike.
No, I think echoing that point, right? I mean, I think Frank goes to the same point. You were mentioning that, right? I mean, really, at the end of the day, hey, it's really our product, this is a real product, this is a core product, and this is awesome and cool stuff that people use. And of course, people is gonna, as Frank said, they're always gonna, your competitors. I mean, your competitors or other guys are gonna come and attack you. And that's to be expected, right? I mean, I think in those cases, I agree. I agree with Frank. I mean, just go out and clarify and say, hey, come on, everything is there.
Yeah, what would you do? Like, if you're an Airbnb or ICOratings, and there's another rating site that just is trolling you, right, and just calling you out, do you engage or not even engage?
Well, it's a very good question, and I can talk about it from Airbnb perspective, because ICOrating, like, we are not really online, we run a very traditional business model, so our community at Airbnb was a strong believer in sharing economy, and it was, as you said, from the initial start, every single person who was hired for Airbnb loved the product so much that it was contagious. They were evangelizing the product. And then if something happened, say there was an attack from the government, from hotels who hated Airbnb, they would defend. We would bring them literally to the municipality to testify and say, this company helped me so much. This company helped me survive the 2008, 2009, and, so forth crisis. So this is what I would do, like, I would deploy those people, and literally that's what we were doing, asking those, can you help us? You see, there is somebody writing those obnoxious comments on the internet, and they would help. So that starts from the very, very beginning, who you hire, who you have on your team, and what are, the initial customers you have who are going to defend you at the end.
And actually, that really is going back to the point that I mentioned earlier, right? I mean, earlier, whether you're building, when you build a community, I mean, make sure not just the users, but we really have the advisors and the key opinion leaders. Some of these people were so important to you, which is really your point, right? I mean, when something, especially, and everything is going so good, that's really nice. But when things don't do that way, that's when these people come in. They would actually be the ones who would help, so from that perspective, it's just going back to that point. But well said, yeah.
I guess we're going to have the last question before we give the floor to the audience. What your advice would be? Should you manage your community yourself as a company, or should you outsource a part of it or the whole community management to guys like what's their name, Amazix, like the pioneer in the space. What's best?
Yeah, I'm actually very opinionated on this. I think if you're going to have a community, whether it's on Telegram or Slack or whatever, you have to do it yourself. And I think it's your CEO, it's your founders, it's your CTO, it's your developers. I think everyone in the company has to be highly engaged because, as you said, your company is about who you hire. Your evangelists are going to be your employees. It's your team. It's your partners. So if you can't communicate that, you can't show that passion digitally as well as in person in meetups, it's going to fail. If you want to succeed, you got to do it. You got to do the heavy lifting. You got to get your hands dirty. You experienced that at Airbnb. You guys have experienced it. You want the founders, you want the engineers, you want the people that are working for you to be highly engaged. I would never outsource this at all. You shouldn't. It's your brand. It's the brand and it's the passion, it's the cause, right?
You could hire the right people. I mean, it's a full-time job at the end of the day, managing a community. So if you hire the right people to do it and they do it effectively, then the results will be good. I mean, I like the CEO and founders and other, I guess, developers can have a say in the community, and they should talk and contribute. But once again, like, they have separate jobs to do, and so like they need to focus on what they're good at. And managing a community is a different job description. Like, so. Yeah, it's tough. I mean, on one side, yeah, like they should do it themselves, but on the other side, they could hire the best people to do it as well. So it's totally.
You're hiring, there'll be your employees that you're hiring.
Yeah, like employees on the team, like actually at the office, in contact with the team, not like some outsourced company that doesn't have that kind of insight into your company, because then your message gets diluted. But like when you have that person on the team, then obviously like they're gonna speak on what's happening and so forth.
And I couldn't agree with them more. But my point, though, is, if you need extra help, meaning that on PR side, media side, those, of course, you can hire, right? But really the core part of it, it's your DNA. I mean, what Frank is saying is your core DNA stays here.
I think the position is called community manager, right? Like companies have that.
You're right.
Like that's the entire position.
Right, I totally agree with that. And though we see a lot of successful projects, specifically those who close mainly in the private sale, and they allocate a tiny fraction of their hard cap, like to public, and then they would hire, like they would outsource it. And when something goes wrong, they're being attacked or something, MSX or like the outsourced company is gonna be just there 24 hours, messaging. So I totally agree. You need to manage the community yourself, but you need to understand how to do it. And that's why, actually, with my network, with our network of ex-Airbnb community management, we are launching, offering this strategy for community development, because at the very core, it's how you plan it, and as we mentioned, what's your DNA, who you hire at the end. So thank you. I'd like to give the floor to the audience. I know there is a great project, Omnitude. They're in the final stage of the ICO. So please share how you manage it in a couple of words, and what would you do different if you were, say, a couple of months back?
I guess for us, we wouldn't have. We did an airdrop early on, and it just brings shit. And I guess the thing that we observed early on is as your community builds, how it changes. We're now at the when Lambo stage that we spend kind of, first of all, like you, that we had kind of the real people excited about the project, asking technical questions. Then it grows and it becomes more generalist. And then towards the end, you get the when exchange, when Lambo. Probably the biggest thing that we did is create an off-topic channel. And now all of that crap is out there, and we've got our main channel, serious discussion. But there's still somewhere for people to share their memes, constantly, all of that. And now, after a lot, I guess actually, sorry, I'm skidding around a bit. Going back to the scammers part, the biggest surprise for me was the coordination the scammers had when the second our ICO launched. We lost control of our Telegram channel in terms of there must have been 400, 500 messages coming through every minute of, here's the Ethereum address, it wasn't us. That literally the second we said ICO live, they're all sat there waiting. And I was just completely shocked. We had to quickly discover how to lock down a Telegram channel in terms of making sure no one could message. I think there's, if you look on Telegram under Chris Painter, there's about 50 of them now that are just copies of me, where it's people constantly just pretending to be anyone on the team, giving out earth addresses and so on. I guess that's all I've got on that.
But you're saying that you get so many spams, and then how did you? I'm sorry, I kind of missed the fact. How did you kind of manage those?
Well,
control it.
You can't. That's the problem. I think me personally, my view is there's a big Telegram's become this community for ICOs. That Telegram needs to do more to stop fake accounts, and Telegram needs a way to verify accounts, something like that. They're not doing enough to stop this kind of scourge of it, and it's gone insane. The same as with Twitter, the amount of send me 2ETH, get 3 million back or whatever it is. That the companies that are in the ICO space need to start doing things to help us regulate against this spamming, because it's becoming a joke now, and there's no way to stop it. And luckily, I don't think anyone from our side fell for it. We constantly bombard our channel with messages. We're never going to PM you. We're never going to do this. We're not going to ask you to contribute to another wallet. But more needs to be done by the platforms that we use to help us avoid these scammers.
Yeah, we need to make sure our team, everyone was very clear on what.
Yeah, like actually Twitter and Instagram and like even the big social medias have this problem they can't solve. I mean, like, someone will just create the same account with the same picture with one letter off, and you've probably seen the tweets, right? Anyone that tweets like in crypto, right afterwards you got another like scammer posting their address, send, they say something like send 5 and then we'll give you 100 back or some crazy things. Anyway, like when we have issues like this with Telegram and these other platforms, there are other platforms like Discord and Rocket Chat, and some projects have tried that method, but at the end of the day, you're right. Like it's a big problem. You can slow it down or try to minimize it, but it's just a problem all around. It's pretty crazy. Yeah.
So, any more questions here from the audience? We can take 2 or 2 max.
In the back.
Hey, so aside from organic growth, which is the most important, I'd like to hear from each of you one strategy or alternative strategy to growing a Telegram channel.
So I haven't done this, but I've been told YouTubers are like big. I don't know if you've seen it, but I was told, and there's a bunch of YouTuber people walking around, like you need to get one of them to talk about you on their YouTube channel. I've been looking at this myself, like some guy named Ian Bellina that does music videos with Lambos. Apparently everyone watches that.
Can I add to that? Because your question was the organic growth, right?
Oh no, I was saying aside from real organic growth.
Oh, besides organic growth. So do you want those guys in your community actually? So once the ICO is finished and it goes to Binance, and the only thing they're gonna talk about is like, oh, when Lambo, when Moon, and so. And once it happens, like it goes up and then it sinks. So if you take this approach, obviously, yeah, go to Inbalina, go to influencers. They're gonna, like pump the FOMO, pump the hype. Yeah, it's a good approach, perhaps. But if you want to have like a long-lasting value, no, just start grassrooting as soon as possible. Do the meetups, get the people who are excited about the product, get them join the Telegram, and then it's gonna make the magic.
One thing he didn't mention is that Airbnb, it took them 8 years to get to a $10 billion valuation. I mean, that's a long time of building communities.
No, but it took us, it took us 2 years actually to grow a community from 200 people in Amsterdam to 7,000 people. That much. It's not that. It's not that much. We are talking about the ICO of 40,000 people in a Telegram group. Online at Airbnb came much later. First everything was done on the ground, and then went online.
It's hard work.
Okay, it's not like hard work, but it's exciting. If you're excited about the project, it's going to be easy.
Hello. What would you recommend for filtering out the community that cares about you versus the ones that there for the Lambo?
Yeah, these guys actually brought up a good point that we didn't talk about. Is you can actually create a sub channel or side channel on Discord or Slack that's specific for developers. We've known other projects like you guys. Once you hit some kind of threshold, all the garbage comes in. then you need to tell the developers, hey, let's fork over to like this place on Slack, and if you're really interested in the projects, here's where all the technical conversation's happening. But you can't remove the other garbage. They just stay there forever, I guess.
Unfortunately, right?
So like I can give the microphone, but the question might be how to first find the good ones rather than the.
I think to his point, right? It's early days. Start talking about your message to the target audience. If your project is technical, go after the technical people. Do meetups, have them believe in what you're doing, and they'll tell their friends. Right? They're all part of the community. They want to work on open source projects, get them involved. They'll bring their friends involved, and that's just hard work. Every day going to a meetup, right? Going to somebody else's meetup, talking about your project, right? It's a lot of hard work.
Well, I know we just mentioned, like, to your question, we mentioned influencer marketing, which are, could be YouTubers or a lot of other channels. Like, one of the most well-known names, like Ian Bellina, also faces a similar issue that all projects face, which is, along with the good crowd comes some of the other crowd, right? Which is the When Moon Lambo and so forth. So we cannot blame these influencers for having these types of people in their community, just like we can't blame projects for having these types of people in their community. At the end of the day, though, if we look at the fundamentals, a person like Ian Bellina is amazing at what he does because he uses a data analytics approach to investing, which has actually taught his entire community on how to invest using the data. And I think this is so powerful because the community that has listened to this, that has done what they did on this, on these opinions, has had a successful track record because of it, and that gains a lot of trust. And so, like, when you look at which community to go, which influencers community to onboard to your project, this is something that, one has to consider is, what is that leader doing that's different than all the other leaders out there? So,
but are we talking about community of investors or community of supporters for your project in the long term? If you talk about Ian Bellina and those influencers,
I think it's all combined because, like, at the end of the day, developers are also watching, and salespeople, operational people, not only investors. Some people don't invest and they just watch these, and they like to gain insight on projects that they didn't see before. I mean, that's what influencer marketing is, right? They've discovered something that they've used their approach for, which they really like and are excited about, and they share it with their followers. And if the followers enjoy that, then they'll go onto the channel and seek more. And the followers could be developers, salespeople, like I said, anybody.
Thank you. Actually, the question was answered before, I think, but I'm going to ask again. The thing what I was thinking about just now was making many channels going, the one channel going a targeting group, I don't know, the tech guys, the other one, I don't know, the customers. Do you think that makes sense in the beginning, or does it make more sense to like have one channel you talk to, like one channel that represents the brand and then split it afterwards?
One more time.
like I think it's something that Chris has answered already. They're experienced guys, and I think it's really good to talk to them when we finish with this panel. Do you guys want to add anything to that? All right. So thank you so much, everybody, for being here. Thank you, fellow panelists. If you have any questions, come up to us, come up to Chris, and we'd be happy to answer.